Welcome back to Get in the Cash Flow Game with K&K, where we talk about investing in real estate, cash flow, building wealth, and all the lessons we learned along the way. And if you can, do me a huge favor, please like and subscribe this podcast, share it with your friends and family. That way we can continue to bring you value every week and get bigger and better guests on the show. Alrighty, so we're back for another K&K episode. We don't have any guests recently, but you guys really liked our solo episodes. So here we go. I'm going to start over. All right, welcome back, everybody. Today, I am going to grill Kenny about his Data Over Drama webinar. So if you guys didn't join, he put so much time and effort into putting together all this data about the housing market, the economy, all this good stuff. And he really understands this stuff like inside and out. He's become quite the data nerd recently. It seems like every time I talk to him about something related to the economy or real estate, he comes out with some kind of data around it. So anyways, Kenny, I kind of want to jump in here real quick. Can you just give everybody a quick overview of what this webinar was? And we're just going to go over a handful of the best slides that you went over.
Yeah. So I'll say this. A lot of people reach out to me often. They go, Kenny, how have you learned? How have you learned so much about all this stuff? Where do you go? What do you do? Right. And because a lot of people want to learn, because the more you learn, the more intelligent you sound. It's better for clients and people and having conversations, right? And when you hear a bad news story or some stupid article or blog or your Uncle Bob says something, and if you have data, it's very hard to argue against somebody when they give you facts and data, right? If you would agree. So I was watching all of this data, all this stuff go on, and I called it drama, right? It's called Data Over Drama, just in the news. And I was kind of getting sick of it. I was like, and I started noticing it was affecting people making decisions with housing, and they'd be forwarding me these articles. I'm like, you really believe this? So I just decided, why don't I dive into housing data, but what affects housing, right? So what affects housing is population, immigration, building of homes, right? Rates, inflation, recession.
There's a lot of different things that affect.
Yeah. So we go down there, right? So I dug into what affects all this and obviously inventory and stuff. So when I started poking around and doing stuff, I wanted to also go to what's happening today. And since everybody wants to compare, because we're all scarred from it, to go back to 2008, I said, cool, well, let's look at 2008 and let's look at today. And let's go over some of the, we're not going to go over everything. I know Krystle has, I don't know how many slides she wants to go over, 6, 7, 5, whatever. We're going to go over some that she picked out that she likes, but I just dive into certain things and I just show you what's going on now, what happened then. And it's really up to you to look at the data and make your own decision on what you think is going on. If you should buy a house, if you should invest in real estate.
Cool. So let's just jump in right now. One of the first slides that you went over, which we've been talking about for a while now, but it's crazy to see it on an actual chart, is the amount of births each year. And your chart goes back I don't know, to the 1920s, and then it goes into the 2000s, the birth rate. So why does the birth rate matter, and how has it changed over time?
Oh, okay, cool. So if you're looking at this chart, right, Krystle's going to show me. The one thing we're going to focus on is, so basically I'd ask you, Krystle, because you know this question, who's the biggest buyer today?
Millennials.
Cool. So the average buyer is about 33. It's moving up to 36, right? Mm-hmm. So if you take a look at the chart, the black chart, if people are looking at this right on YouTube, right here.
Yep.
Do you notice that there's a peak in the chart?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So at the beginning of the chart, what's the date?
The boomers.
No, at the end here.
1981.
Till when?
1998.
Okay, cool. So that peak, where would you probably land? Around 1990? Is that a good number?
Somewhere around there.
So that's the peak, right?
Yep.
So what's 2023 minus 1990?
33.
So if you're looking at this chart, this is the births, right, for millennials. When did it peak?
Around 1990-ish.
Who's the biggest buyer?
Millennials. So there's more buyers in the market now than have been in a long time, because the generation prior to that was Gen X, and there weren't, the amount of births were down pretty, a decent amount as compared to millennials.
So not only is the millennial population, the births were peaking 33 years ago, the buyers are peaking. They're all coming out of the family's house, out of college, getting married, all that. That's the biggest buyer. So we're just backing into, we're not in a downward, we're at the peak of the cycle. So, if they did a survey, they asked, millennials, are you likely to buy a house next 1 to 2 years? 64% said, yes, I'm going to buy a house.
Right. And I know that this is slides a little bit later on, but this kind of like the combination of millennials being the biggest buyer right now and being at the peak in terms of like births and like how many people are in there, that generation looking to purchase homes, combined with also like a 15-year record low for building, right? Something like that. Some kind of crazy record low for like building actual homes is creating sort of this crazy low inventory scenario, or it's definitely not helping in any way. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's more than just that. That is one of them.
But that's one of the things, right?
We're underbuilt. Why don't we just wait to get to that chart? So
we're going to get down to that chart.
Building,
but is that the
building
case?
is a factor of it? Yes, one of them. Yes.
Yeah, building's a factor, but also like not only have we not built very many units or nearly enough, but
from 2010 to 2019, we're not talking from the peak of building. We're talking the average years when they're building 12.5 million homes in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, whatever those numbers are. We built 6.9 million homes because we built way too many homes in the last boom, right? And the market did what?
Absorbed them.
No, crashed.
Oh, crashed, yeah.
And then when the market's crashing, you're not building.
Right.
You're basically, it's all foreclosure and short sales.
Yes.
So that is a big problem.
Right. So, but now at the same time, we have the largest kind of millennial buyer coming into the market to buy when we haven't built enough homes.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So, and then you talked about like how many times people move throughout their life. Just like as an example, you and I counted how many times we've moved.
Oh my gosh, this story's crazy. How many? Well, you said me. I was like, since I got here, was it 20 times? We said between offices and everything, am I at 20?
Yeah, but from the time we met, which was basically 2009 until today, I think we've moved we've been together, so that's been 15 years.
Every year we moved once on the average.
And we've moved, like 15
between
or 16 times.
Whatever, yeah.
And I calculated, because of the time it takes us to pack, unpack, and move, like that we've literally lost 60 days of our life to moving, which is really sad. And that's why I'm moving one more time when Kenny finally buys me a house. But yes. But that being said, obviously people like in their 20s and things move a heck of a lot more than like as you age, basically you don't move as often.
Yeah. So I brought this chart in because I was kind of fascinated. I was looking, I'm like, wait a minute. So if we're living longer, right? So people are living longer. And we have a chart like that below. So we're living longer for sure. And so if we're living longer, that means I looked at it and said, well, how often do people move in their 50s and 60s and 70s? I mean, you and I know, they ain't moving. You hit 60, 70, you could have it, you're not moving. But then I'm like, if they're not moving, they're not selling. But if they're living longer, they're not going to sell for longer. And so if we have this technology what the thing is technology and tests are finding things earlier to cure it. See the long. So by the time we die, if we're living till 100 years old and we don't have the housing and we're just not building, this is just more housing that is going to sit on the market. So when I looked from 60 and beyond, Krystle, you're seeing there, the average person moves less
maybe
than,
once.
Maybe once.
Maybe one time they might move in their life, but that's like a low
That
percentage
is inventory that is not going to move. And remember, guys, if that's a free and clear house and somebody inherits it, I don't know the percentage, but most people are like, I'm not going to sell this. I'm going to run around and have cash. So maybe they will, but that might be a rental property.
Well, and not to mention like in places that are pretty expensive too, like a California or something, if someone inherits the house, like that could be the only way they could afford to own a home now is through inheriting a home.
Yeah. Especially in a nice neighborhood. Yeah. So that's one of the things I looked at. I thought that was very fascinating. It's definitely going to it will affect housing because, we're not moving.
So then it kind of like segues into the median time that people have owned a home over time. So it seems like that's also grown. Like in 1985, people moved on average every 5 years. And then even all the way up to like 2005, it was like 6 years. But now we're getting into 2020, 21. This doesn't go to 22 and 23, but I'm guessing it might even be longer actually. But it says the average length of home ownership is 13 years, like in 20 and 21.
Technically, it was actually, I think, like 13 and a half. So we used to have a saying in residential real estate, during the last boom, everybody refis every 5 to 7 years. Everybody moves every 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Because that's what the data showed.
Yeah.
Now, people are now staying in their home 13 plus years. Like Krystle said, this is through 2021. I guarantee you that number is going to go to 15 very quickly because people are not moving. Low rates,
Well, they all
affordability, all this.
remodeled their houses, and they got low rates.
So what does that mean? That means people are not trading up from a starter home to a bigger home. So it's just less inventory moving. That new first-time home buyer is not sliding in. So more problems with inventory. It's not helping.
That's wild. Let me see. The next one I wanted to go over is basically the single-family housing units completed, or actually the number of homes built, right? So this is the number of homes built in the U.S. between 1900 and 2023.
Yeah, I mean, just go read the 10 because they're in 10-year tranches. Read it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at this chart, like basically 2000 to 2009, that decade was kind of like a record period for home building. And then basically 2010 to 2029, the forecast is pretty bleak. But like 2010 to 2019 was less than half of what was built in the previous decade. And then 2020 to 2029, we're not there yet, but it's not looking great.
No, so
it's looking like it's very low numbers.
Yeah, so we basically averaged, I think, right, Krystle, 70s, 80s, 90s, about 12 million homes per decade.
Yep. And then we bumped up to like 14 and a half.
That was during, and then the biggest years were 04, 5, and 6, right?
Yes.
2006, I believe, was the biggest year. I think it was the biggest year we built homes, which is a rarity. We'll probably never do that again because builders, obviously, if anybody was around, builders lost their,
Yeah.
Their ass. And so basically what happened, we went from 12 to 14, and then we went to 6.9 million. And what happened between that time and this time? Did the population grow? Yes.
Yeah.
Did more millennials? Yes. So yeah, some people.
So low rate environment combined with amount of people looking for homes combined with low inventory is where we get this lovely predicament that we're in.
So more problems.
Yeah.
So imagine they built 5 million homes, there'd be that many more homes around.
Yep.
Just remember, 5 million is the average. That wasn't the peak.
Yeah. So then that takes us to like the number of single family housing units completed. And it shows here, this chart.
See the peak.
If you look, the peak was obviously like that 2003 to 2006 period. And then it dropped off sharply like in 2009.
Yeah.
And then we've had the last 13 years, basically from 2010 to 2023 are like record lows, like basically 13 straight years below the 50-year average, which is pretty significant. Like you even look at building from 1970 to 2000, it was like up there. There was like a year here or there where it was like significantly lower, like in the 80s, which I think was a recession, right? And then again in the 90s, there was another recession. So you can kind of see every recession, basically, that building drops off a little bit, but it's only like 1 year and then it kind of gets back to where it's going.
Yeah, one thing that I'm just sliding up real quick because I wanted to mention while we're here, if you just go down a few slides, one thing that Krystle didn't point out here, it's fine, is we talked about, housing, formation of housing has grown. We talked about, millennials coming in, but we're also like, well, who else is coming in our country, Krystle, right?
Yeah.
Who else is coming in here that is taking up housing?
Yeah.
So if they're not owning, they're renting.
Yep.
Well, we've had, Krystle can tell you from, if you just take.
In 2016, it says 40, what is this? What is that? 43.7 million.
Yeah, you can see
immigrants.
If you look at from the,
from 1900 to like basically the 1980s, those numbers were pretty low. And in the 1990s, it starts kind of climbing, and we've basically been steadily climbing since then. And it looks like they're projecting it to continue growing even more.
Yeah. So we've had tens of millions of immigrants come into the country in some states like California and Texas and Arizona and things, maybe Florida inherit a lot, but this is probably legal. And
so we can't even account for people that are illegal.
It's another 10, 12. Well, my point is these are more people coming in, which we don't even have the housing for, let alone for that.
Right. That's wild.
We've been working on this for the past few months.
We always want to bring as much value as we possibly can, and our partner, Prime Corporate Services, is all about bringing you a service you can't get anywhere else at a price you can't get anywhere else. Whether you're new to owning a business or owning a property, or you're an experienced property owner or investor, Prime Corporate Services is not only going to help you, but they're going to make the process so much easier. So if you book a call, the first thing they're going to do for you is help you understand what your business structure should look like, your corporate structure, tax planning, estate planning, all of that. Maybe you're saying, I'm brand new to starting a business and all this sounds foreign and complicated. Remember, this company helps new people just getting started every day. They're going to help you form the entity that's best for you and walk you through the process. Before I found this company, we paid thousands of dollars to other attorneys, CPAs, and consultants to try to understand exactly how we need to be structured to be as protected as possible. We've also gone the other route and used online platforms to form entities which unnecessarily put us at risk. You guys, you don't have to do that with this company. They'll do all of these things for you at a reasonable price, so you never have to think about saving money at the expense of exposing yourself to liability. We've searched high and low, and you will not find this much value anywhere else. All you have to do is schedule a free call today. Just go to primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. Once again, that's primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. We'll also leave the info for you in the show notes. Okay, so then the next one that I want to go through is we're going to get into the mortgages, because this is where everybody's talking about how there's going to be all these foreclosures and housing prices are going to drop and all this kind of crazy stuff. This is one where I want to kind of talk about the loans and what kind of loans we were making back then versus what kind of loans have been made to date. And this chart is kind of crazy because there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4 different colors. So there's one is basically the Fannie Freddie loans, and then the FHA VA loans.
You forgot this one first. So we're going to go over a couple of my favorite ones. Remember this one?
Okay.
Household growth.
Oh, okay. So
this has to do with it though. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we can just do the household growth really quickly, which is basically.
This is one of my favorite charts. So Krystle, I'm just going to ask you a question. You're looking at this. What colors do you see on the chart?
Yellow and black.
Okay, cool. So if you're looking at one side of the chart, what color do you see higher? On the other side of the chart, what color do you see higher?
So basically, early on, in the 2000s,
sure.
From 2000, it says 2 to 2010, let's call it. The yellow is household growth, and the black is the annual completions. So basically, household growth was lower than the annual completions.
Okay, so let's stop there. So what you're saying is the black was higher and the yellow was lower.
Correct.
So it's very simple. Yellow is people buying homes, demand, and black is people building homes.
Right.
Okay, cool. On the other side of the chart, what's higher?
So basically from 2015 to 2022, household demand is higher than household completions,
okay, cool.
Building.
Okay. So basically, when you're looking at data, if you woke up from a coma and you had no idea what's going on in the economy and you looked at this chart, you would say, wow, it looks like we built a lot more in this kind of decade, and then we basically built a lot less in this decade, but the demand, it's not saying the demand is as high, but there's a lot of demand here, right? The demand.
Right. And now, for example, though, from 2006 to 2008, roughly, it was the demand was half or less than half of what was being completed. But in, basically between 2017 to 2022, if I had to look at that and take an average, it looks like we're about 25% lower than what we need for housing completions.
Okay. So
to cover just demand, to just basically meet the demand.
So here is one of the most important things I learned on this chart. Everybody talks about what year did the housing market crash.
Right. Yeah. And everybody talks about
tell me.
A lot of people say 2008. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But it actually started in 2006.
Exactly. And who's short of the market on my thing? Michael Berry. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, guys. Everybody's but you hear it's 2008. It's going to crash. You don't understand. Okay. So Krystle, You're looking at the chart. Guys, this is one of the most important things right here, because if Krystle or anybody was looking at this chart back in 2005, and we knew what we knew now, you could clearly see there's a major problem. So in 2005, Krystle, demand and supply were very close, right?
Yes.
And in 2006, two things happened. What happens?
Demand dropped off a cliff.
But what else happened?
What?
Demand fell off a cliff.
Yes.
But what else happened?
They were building more homes.
No, they built the most homes.
The most, yeah.
The demand fell half. And then wait. And in 2007, what happened to demand?
It fell even farther.
And then they still built a lot of homes.
They still
Look,
built.
we're not even here. They built more. It's like they built more than almost the highest year we did here. And then what happened in 2008?
Same.
And then built homes.
Same. And even 2009 and 2010. And then finally in 2011, it was about even. Basically, supply and demand was basically at break even. So now the reason why people say, a lot of people, like if you listen, for example, we love to listen to like Logan Matashami or like some of these other guys that are like, self-proclaimed data nerds, they basically will say the same thing. No, there's not going to be a housing crash for all these various reasons. But right here, it's just showing us that demand is still higher than the supply. Like there are not enough homes being built for the demand still today. And it's only going to get worse when rates drop.
Yeah, and we're comparing ourselves to a time where we went crazy with the building, right? Remember we were at 12 million, went way over. And so we haven't even gotten into the loan part. So you can clearly see, Krystle, if you saw this chart and you're Michael and he was looking at the loans too, and you see demand fall off, you would realize we have a major problem. So in 2006, everybody, there was already a major problem. But nobody's talking about 2006.
No, everything was still good in 2006.
There's my point.
There were some whispers, but nobody believed it.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. So that's a very important chart to go over. And I think the next one you want to go over is the
it is the loans.
The loans. Okay, cool.
Okay, so basically now we're going to go to the first lien mortgage origination.
Okay, cool. So Krystle's looking at the chart. I like Krystle. Krystle. So at the bottom of the chart, read off.
There's the four colors, okay? So one is basically for Fannie and Freddie loans that were done.
Everybody knows who that is.
The next are FHA and VA loans. The next one is private securitization. And then the last one is portfolio. So quickly explain what private securitization and portfolio is.
Okay, cool. So remember, we're going to remember private securitization. Just remember, that's the important thing here. So Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, you guys know what that is. They do 90+% of the loans backed by the government, right? We're good there. Those have to qualify full doc, full income. There's never a state in any of that. They never did it.
Yep.
Okay. Portfolio is a bank like Krystle, a lot of your banks. They do a loan, they put it on their balance sheet, they don't sell it.
Yep.
So there's all these,
like a First Republic. That's a great example.
Yeah, there's a lot of portfolio banks because there's a lot of those lendings. Remember, community banks make up 40% lending. Yeah, they get sold to Fannie Freddie, but there's a lot of portfolio lending going on.
Yeah. Basically, the way that it goes right now is pretty much like Fannie Freddie's like the biggest portion of the loans. And then honestly, portfolio is the next biggest. And sometimes it's kind of like between portfolio and FHA, VA
Correctly.
originations.
So I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
Before we get into portfolio securitization.
Yeah.
In the 2003, 4, 5,
yep.
do you see a lot of gray?
Yeah, there's a ton of gray.
Cool.
And that's the private securitization.
Okay. Today, can you even see the gray?
You could almost miss it if you don't look really closely. Like it's a very, very small percentage.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to tell you about that, but I'm going to make a comment here. There is articles that were written that said, oh my gosh, we're doing bad loans again. Like 2008, we're going to have a crash.
Yeah.
So Krystle.
We all know that's not
true. You cannot even see on here. So do you know what that represents? 1%.
Yep.
So today, the non-QM, the bank statement, all that, all that stuff we call non-QM, 1%. Do you think that was 1%?
No, that was honestly, it's funny because during that, so basically during 2004 to 2007, let's call
almost the majority,
close to it. Like it's funny because they were doing what we called it liar doc. We called it all these other things. But because there were these loans, there was hardly any FHA and VA loans being done because they were getting probably these 100% financing, neg-am loans, like all that kind of stuff. at that period. So there was less of a need for FHA and VA at that point.
So basically, private securitization is we take a loan, you do it, and then you package $100 million and you sell it on a secondary market. Yeah. And then they'll sell that portfolio several times. Remember you heard they sold that portfolio 4 different times and they make money every time. Cool. That's, guys, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad.
Yeah.
The non-QM loans we're doing now, not bad. These loans, like Krystle said, hear this? We call it a heartbeat and pen. If you had a heartbeat and a pen, we can get you a loan. Hey, how come the guy who worked at McDonald's owned 4 houses? Well, he's a manager. We just stated his income, said he made $15,000. The guy that even owns McDonald's, does he even make $15,000 a month? You know, I'm just joking, but these were just a bunch of option arm, liar loans, stated loans, BS loans, not good. That's what that is. That is one of your big problems. And Krystle, right now, you can barely see. We're not doing a lot of those loans.
Okay, cool. So now that we know that we're not doing a bunch of crappy loans,
we're going to go to our last slide.
The last slide is foreclosure.
Remember, guys,
because everybody's talking about foreclosures.
The webinar is much bigger, much longer, but Krystle want to highlight these. Okay, so Krystle, I want you to look at here. In 2000, and there was 2 million right here. What year was that?
Crazy. 2009.
Okay, cool. So go to 2012.
2012 is like...
How much lower do you think it is than the 2 million?
About half.
Okay, cool. In 2012, nationally, what percentage of that in 2012 do you think was the overall sales from foreclosure and short sales in the market?
Ooh, I don't know. A low percentage, though.
Yes.
28%.
Cool. So in 2012, remember, it's lower than this one, right? 35% of sales on the national average were from foreclosure and short sales.
Wow, that's a lot.
So if 2 million, you said double.
That was like 90% of the sales.
Okay, cool. And remember, guys, if you're in places like Arizona, Riverside, California,
well, Nevada, even too.
Oh, Nevada, Florida.
Yeah.
Those 4 states ruined it for the rest of you guys. Like other states didn't have it. So Krystle just read, she thought 35% when you look at this graph. So basically, the 2 million, there was probably, we were on 70-80% of the sales.
Yep.
So Krystle, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Fast forward to 2020. Is this, what number is that? Is that 2020? Where is this meant nothing? 0?
2021.
Okay. That means we were not allowed to do foreclosures, right? Remember, it was nothing.
Yeah, because COVID or whatever, that basically 2020 and 2021 were like...
So let's say foreclosures were minimal, right?
Yeah.
So there's articles that came out that said, oh my gosh, foreclosures are up 300%, 700%. That is it. It's over. We're all going to lose our houses. It's over. 2008, here we come. So Krystle, question. Now we have a number of 88,000, right?
It's definitely up, but it's nothing. Because like
Okay, cool.
even in 2019, the foreclosure, there was 278,000 foreclosures. And in 2021, there was like a fraction of that. Like there was probably like, I don't know, 5,000 foreclosures, if that. And now for 2022, for the first 3 quarters of 2022, there was only 88,000.
So when you guys hear 300%, 700%, that would be like, ready? If you bought Bitcoin at $1 and it went to $60,000, you'd make a lot of money, right, Krystle?
Yes.
That's more than 300%. That's like a gazillion %, right?
Right.
So when you have nothing and you go to like 20,000, that's like 300, 400, 700, whatever. So my point is the foreclosures were minimal, and of course they went up 300% because there was like 10,000 a year. But like Krystle said, they're like, we're going to go back to 2008. At 88,000, the peak was at 2 million. That's what I'm saying. We're not even close.
Well, even prior to that, which is basically 2003 to 2006, it was about 745,000 foreclosures. So we're basically like, less than 10%. We're about 10% of that for the first 3 quarters of 2020.
Exactly. So even if foreclosures go up from here, they double, triple, whatever, quadruple. You're still not in a crazy market. Also, remember, banks are doing more workouts with loan modification, stuff like that. They don't want to do short sales. They don't want to do foreclosures. They're modifying. They're putting stuff on the back. So my point is, guys, we went over 5-6 slides. This webinar is really good, the rest of it, but I continue to just look at the data, and you can clearly see here.
It's actually 7 slides, but yes.
Okay. There's a big difference from 2008 till today. Like I tell everybody, that doesn't mean we can't have some type of crisis or housing in the future. But the data right now is showing that we do not have enough inventory and we have too many buyers.
Yep.
And when the rates hit about 7.5%, 7%, yes, we had to slow down because affordability is making sense because we had 40, 30, 50, 60% equity gains.
But now I saw that the average home, like the average primary, the rate for a primary residence is like the mid fives now, right?
It's the high fives, yeah.
Yeah, like 5.6 or something.
Yeah, so we've come down, so that's why you're seeing. So affordability came back, so that's my point is when rates go skyrocketing, it doesn't make sense, but rates are down, and we still have no inventory. So this is the data. I will keep studying it week over week, month over month, and if things change, you can clearly see, like Krystle and I saw, when you see demand fall and supply, you can clearly see we're going to have a problem.
Yep.
I don't see anything today that says we're going to have a problem.
Well, we do have a problem. We don't have enough homes.
Well, as far as
That's
as far as 2008.
Yes.
So that's it.
So, all right, guys, that's it. And if you want to see the full version, I don't know, Kenny, where'd you put it? Is it on YouTube? Is it on?
Nope. So it's not out yet. The PDF's coming out next week, and the full version's coming out. So we'll have it all over media, emailed out, all that. So you should definitely hit us up. Hit me up on Instagram if you want. DM me, get on my email list because you guys are missing out on the scoop and the brief and all the other stuff. Plus, we're going to send that out. But thanks for watching.
If you're already a real estate investor, you know that aside from cash flow, you also get huge tax benefits by investing in real estate. But are you taking full advantage of all the potential tax benefits? We've been working with Tim Looney at CSSI for a few years now, and he's saved us and our clients hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in taxes doing cost segregation studies on their properties. Let me give you a few examples. We bought a property in 2019. If we had just used straight line depreciation, we would have saved about $18,750 in taxes. But because we did a cost seg, we saved $258,000. That's $239,350 more than standard straight line depreciation in the first year. The other great thing is, if you're classified as a real estate professional, you can apply this to other sources of income like W-2 or 1099 income, and you can also roll over any unused depreciation to future years. If you've owned your properties for a few years already, don't worry, you can still do a cost seg and save big on your taxes. This is not tax advice, so consult your CPA to see if you qualify to take advantage of these benefits. Call or text Tim at 318-469-9861 to get your complimentary property analysis. Once again, that's 318-469-9861. And I'll also include his information in the show notes. You guys don't want to miss out on these tax savings.